There's only one thing a man can do when he's going through a spiritual and existential funk. Buy new protein. I put a video out recently that was basically a list of advice I would give to people just getting into lifting weights or fitness for the first time. Now, to anybody who's actually had one of these conversations with me in real life, they would tell you that there was one thing that was conspicuously absent from that list. And that was, of course, the first thing I usually tell people, especially guys that have a smaller frame, is you need to be eating your body weight in protein, in grams. If you can't eat your body weight in protein, you're just gonna get frustrated, you're not gonna see results, and you're probably gonna end up quitting and not following through with any of it. So I recommend that to everybody. I know that these things change over time, the recommendations, the science changes and evolves, and so I left that off this list this past time because I wanted to research it and explore it a little further, but I figured what better way to research something than to dive in and experience it myself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna eat my body weight in protein every single day for 30 days. We're gonna be eating a lot of meat. I'm gonna see how it makes me feel. I'm gonna see how difficult it is to do, little tips and tricks and ways to do it and ways to accomplish that goal, and see if it works for me. We're gonna do some research, find out if it's healthy, and we're gonna figure it out. But it's gonna be a fun time, and we're gonna see if we can see some results. So stick around. When I go to the protein store, I like to dress appropriately. You know, act like I've been there before. Gaze upon it, and now forget you ever saw it. Just making a quick little protein run. Trying to get a little protein on the way, but apparently bananas are not rich in protein. 1.3 grams, according to Google. So if I ate 100 bananas today, I would be well on my way to my daily goal. Don't act like I haven't done it before, okay? That was actually my nickname in college. 100 bananas Scott, they called me. Alright, well, this guy parked like a little bit of a dink, but sometimes people do that. Got the old standby, some Synthesix, and then we got, you know, this stuff with a deer head on it because they got to appeal to all those Steve Rinella, Joe Rogan, Cam Hanes fanboys, you know? So count me in, brothers and sisters. And then another deer. Swole whip. Coming to a forearm muscle near you. Step into my office for a second. So I screwed up, guys. I was doing really good the first week there, and then for the weekend I went home to visit family. I was kind of hanging out, ordering takeout, had a few adult beverages, and I just sort of lost track, and I know that I didn't do my body weight in protein, you know, so I'm not just gonna make it up. I'm not gonna just take a pause. So what I'm gonna do is just start over, but it was definitely a good realization right out of the gate that you had to make a few changes. One of the things I used to do when I was out, when I was traveling, and was on the run, I read this in a men's fitness magazine a long time ago, and it was one of the things you can do is go to McDonald's and get a double quarter pounder with no cheese, get it plain, just the meat, and you're gonna get, so this is from the McDonald's website, you're getting 48 grams of protein in that double quarter pounder with no cheese. But then you go on and you look down and you're getting 59% of your daily sodium. You're getting 55% of your daily cholesterol. So I don't really know if this is a great strategy. I think I gotta be a little more creative. I'm gonna go to the store and get some things to be able to take with me, whether I'm running errands or I'm traveling, so I can just be a little more prepared and have the protein and healthy choices at my disposal. I got a bag of raw almonds to keep in the car, and this is my little solution to the McDonald's hamburger problem. Walnuts, I've heard, are one of the better nuts for you in terms of eating all the time. So I got some walnuts to keep in the other car. So I think these things are not going to be the solution to all my problems, but at least they'll give me a little more convenience and give me a little bit closer to reaching that goal. We're going to be eating a lot of meat. You and I are going to be eating a lot of meat if we want to get our body weight in protein. You could probably do it with beans, but that's probably going to be a lot of beans. Make a lot of meat at a time, put it in the fridge, eat it throughout the week. So I went ahead and took a crack at solving this whole bean issue we were just talking about, and this is the amount of beans you would have to eat to get your body weight, or my body weight, which is 175 pounds, in one day. So, you know, say you wanted a variety of beans in your bean diet. Pinto beans are 21, black beans came in the highest at 28 grams in a can. You would need to eat all this, so it would be like breakfast, 2 cans of beans, lunch, 2 cans of beans, and then for dinner, ooh, you want a big dinner, 3 cans of beans. I guess an alternative would be to eat about 1.5 bags of lentils, but as you know, these things swell up to probably 5 times this volume when you cook them, so you're gonna have to eat a lot of meat or a lot of beans. A lot of beans. I quit. This is f***ing stupid. So after a few weeks, I developed a creeping suspicion that what I was doing wasn't healthy. And the first thing that sort of roused my suspicions was that I just started looking a little more at some of the other ingredients beside the protein, or some of the other nutrients on some of my favorite proteins. This is BSN Synthesix. This is one of my all-time favorites. You know, and I'm going through here, and it's 10% per serving of saturated fat. Now I was drinking 4 of these a day, right? I was doing 2 double shakes, so I was getting 40% of my saturated fat in just those 2 shakes before I even got into eating any meat. Cholesterol, 23% of your daily allowance of cholesterol in 1 serving, and I was doing 4. So I was getting 100% of my cholesterol basically just off of these shakes alone before I even got into the chicken and the beef and the venison and everything else. So I realized that that probably wasn't good for me. This bucked up stuff, I would recommend this too. Taste is amazing. It's reasonably lean, you know, but I'm going through here and it's like 11% of your daily sodium. So I'm getting over 40% of my daily sodium before I even get into the meat. The second thing was that I just wasn't eating as much fruits and vegetables. It was sort of getting crowded out. I would put so much meat and shake into my body that I just wasn't eating my apples and my bananas, you know, as much as I should be. So my fruit and vegetable intake went down as my meat and dairy consumption went up. And I came across this book, Clean Protein. And this book basically goes over the health risks of eating way too much meat, the history of how this came about, all of the studies that show that this is actually healthy that are oftentimes funded by the meat industry. Imagine that. Funding a study and getting the answer that you wanted. This happens all the time in all areas of life, so continue to have a skeptical mind. I'm not going to take it as gospel. I'm going to continue to do more research, but it sort of opened my eyes up to the health risks of eating all your protein from animal protein. You know, this book, like any, sort of has its own agenda. There's a lot of hyperbole involved, and there's a lot of implied causation, but they do throw a ton of studies at you, and you know, study after study after study, it's like the evidence starts to add up. So I would just say, do your research, maintain a skeptical mind and a healthy, broad diet of reading different sources, and you might come to the right conclusions. And if you think you need any help with maintaining a skeptical mind, here's a book that will make you question every statistic you ever hear. Economic Facts and Fallacies by Thomas Sowell. This book I recommend more than any other book because it just makes your bullshit detector that much more in tune. Read this if you want to question everything you ever hear in the media. You know, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, and this will teach you all about it. As I was doing this protein project, I was also happened to be reading at the time this book here, A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century by Heather Hang and Brett Weinstein. Brett has been on Rogan a few times. I think he's a really sharp guy, and so I decided to read this book. Absolutely enjoyable to read. There's so much good information about this, but one thing I wanted to highlight for the purposes of what I'm talking about now is that in this, they articulate so well that health outcomes are oftentimes dependent on the individual. So there's so many different variables that go into health, and modern medicine is basically focused on the average, right? The average human. Well, the average human doesn't really exist. We all have different things that work for us. There are people who can eat nothing but meat all the time and be fine. There are people who can eat very little vegetables and still, you know, operate at a high level. We all have different blood types. We have different ancestry and history, and we come from places all over the world. You know, humans invented ships and air travel not so long ago, and we all came to different lands that are different from where our ancestral lineage is from. We might have had a diet consisting of something totally different than, you know, your neighbor. So your neighbor might be able to get away with eating McDonald's all the time and not gaining weight and not getting risks of heart disease, but you might not, and it might be vice versa. So we're all different. We all need to pay attention to what is good for us, what feels right to us, what makes us feel good. And to me, eating my body weight in protein seemed a little excessive. So I decided to do a little bit of research and figure out if that was actually excessive, and what I found was that it might be. So I combed through a whole bunch of sources on the internet. One of the most useful was this article I found from the Mayo Clinic, and it starts out, and this is something that I was confirmed in this book, Clean Protein, and it is that you need about 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight. So for me, I'm about 175 pounds, so that is 80 kilograms, so I need about 64 grams to not be deficient. Well, most of us are trying to be a little more than not deficient, right? If you're trying to become more athletic or put on some muscle, then you're going to want a little bit more than that. Athletes need 1.1 to 1.5 grams per kilo. So for me, 88 grams to 120 grams. People who are lifting weights regularly or training for some sort of event, they recommend about 1.2 to 1.7 grams per kilo. So for me, at 80 kilograms, that means I need 96 to 136 grams of protein per day, a lot less than what I was eating. And finally, I found that in excess of 2 grams per kilo is probably considered excessive. So for me, at 80, anything over 160 was probably excessive. So those days where I was getting 180, 190, that's probably a little too much, and excessive in the fact that I'm eating a lot of meat and getting a lot of saturated fat, a lot of sodium, a lot of cholesterol, wasn't eating enough fruits and vegetables, and your body can't store protein. So one, it's wasteful, and two, if you're getting it from animal sources, you're getting so much more extra nonsense that's going to contribute to heart disease, diabetes, cancer. So I just think that the conclusion here ought to be that we ought to focus on what feels right for us and diversify our sources. Eat more beans, eat more nuts, eat more grains that have protein, quinoa. Getting it all from animal sources and protein shakes is not the move in my opinion. My intention was for this to become one of those 30-day challenges. I ate my body weight in protein for 30 days. Well, a few weeks in and it just wasn't for me. I knew that it probably wasn't healthy for me, and I know there's a lot of guys out there who will eat a jar of mayonnaise for some views on YouTube, but it ain't me, babe. It ain't me. But I did learn a lot of things along the way. I hope you guys learned some things too. Made a lot of really good meals, and I'm not gonna have to tweak that much, honestly. I'm gonna replace some of my meat intake with bean intake, and I'm gonna cut my shakes down to probably 1 or 2 a day instead of 4. Really not all that much. I'm gonna eat more vegetables. I'm gonna have more room in my stomach. I feel like I have a firmer grasp on what is healthy. I'm currently eating better than I ever probably have before in my life, and I discovered these. Fit Crunch, Robert Irvine's Fit Crunch, probably the best protein bar you're ever gonna have. Tastes like a candy bar. I think my biggest takeaway or my biggest insight from all of this is, and this might ruffle some feathers out there, but I think the people, the men in particular, that are trying to eat gram of protein per body weight or 1.5 grams or more and just become super jacked, I think they are, whether they know it or not, making a trade-off between looking a certain way when you're younger and having serious health consequences along the road. Life is all about trade-offs, but do what you want with that information and at least be aware that you're making a choice here. And yeah, I appreciate you guys sticking around to the end with me. I hope you learned something, and if you like this type of content, then please subscribe to my channel. Appreciate it. Peace.